Okay, here's me at my desk. One problem that I've wrestled with over the years is getting enough sleep. And even when I try to get enough sleep, I often struggle with insomnia, waking up in the night, not being able to go back to sleep. So I was curious. I have a Fitbit Charge 2, which lets me monitor my levels of sleep per night, and I've collected some data on it, and I'm going to be analyzing that in this lab. So for my first step, I'm just describing what I'm going to be doing, how I'm going to be collecting the data. Um, for you, it may not be something super personal. That's okay. Just come up with something for this lab, and I give several suggestions in the lab instructions. Feel free to check in with me too if you have any questions. And I think the question I'm most interested in, or perhaps worried about, given all the studies they've done on brain research and the importance of deep sleep, I want to know: am I getting less than the minimum recommended amount of deep sleep per night? If I'm getting the minimum amount, that's great. If I'm getting more than the minimum amount, that's also great. My concern is: am I getting less than the minimum recommended amount? And I say it's a left-tailed question. Let me give you a quick visual on why that is. So if the amount of deep sleep that people get is a normal distribution, I think that's a reasonable assumption. Here's the mean, and later I'm going to explain why I put this at 90 minutes, but I'm putting this at 90 minutes. I want to know if I'm somewhere down here, if the average amount of deep sleep I'm getting is somewhere here in this left tail. If I'm getting right on the mean, or if I'm getting above, to me, both of those are great situations, and they're pretty much essentially the same for now. But my concern is, am I in this left tail? So my null hypothesis would be that I'm getting exactly the recommended amount, but my alternative is going to be that I'm getting less than. And this is a case where I'd actually prefer not to reject the null, because if I do reject the null hypothesis, it means that I'm probably getting less than the minimum recommended amount of deep sleep. And that's why it's a left-tailed question there. If your question was something, am I getting a different amount of deep sleep per night than the national average, but you don't specify whether you're getting less than or more than, that would be an example of a two-tailed question. So those words different from suggest that either tail would allow you to reject, and that is going to slightly change how you get your p-value and a couple other steps. Okay, for step 3, we need to enter the data into SPSS. And in the previous lab, the data was already there. We just analyzed it. To actually enter the data is fairly straightforward. When I opened up SPSS, I just canceled out of that introductory screen, and that brought me to this empty sheet. And here I'm just going to start entering my data. So this is the data I've already taken from my Fitbit, the number of minutes of deep sleep per night. Let me go ahead and enter these. Okay, and I've entered them all now. I had 48 data points. Again, if you can aim for 30 or more, depending on what you're measuring. If you really can't get 30, I give some instructions there on how to include that in your limitation section. It's still okay for the purpose of this. I was going to put in the date that I collected each of these, but I think I'm going to take that out for now. If I click, either double click there or click down here on the variable view, I can name this deep sleep. And I think there's some rules about what your names can be. I believe you're not allowed to have spaces there. I don't want decimals there. It doesn't really make sense. I might put something like in minutes per night, something like that. And I'm not going to have any missing values. So this is what my data set would look like. You may end up having more columns, but for the purpose of this lab, there will just be a single column that you'll be analyzing the data in. And very, very important, before you go too far at all, make sure you save your data. SPSS does not have an auto-save feature. There's been many times where I've gone fairly deep in and then something happened, power went out or whatever, and I lost all the data. So this is going to be maybe Math 220, Lab to Showalter, something like that.